All right. Hey, happy Wednesday, everybody. It is Wednesday. It is 4 p.m. Pacific. Heck, let's do a Starfinder Wednesday since we're here. Today, it's going to be a good one. I hope you've got your notes. I hope you're ready to jot down all of the interesting facts that are going to come out, because today we've got Amanda and we're going to be talking about Triaxus. So I'm excited about the show. Amanda, are you excited about the show?
I'm always excited for everything, Dan.
Yeah, see, this is going to be good. I'm excited. So what we're going to do is we've got a little bit of lore that we're going to go through, some history. We've got some maps, a couple images that we're going to go through. And then we'll do some Q&A with all you lovely people in the Twitch chat. So yeah, so let's see how that goes. First off, Triaxus. We've heard about Triaxus since before Starfinder.
Absolutely.
And some people know this, some people don't. Let's jump back into that stuff and like go back to the Pathfinder days and Triaxus, the kind of the introduction of.
Ah, ye oldie Pathfinder days.
Ye oldie Pathfinder days.
In which Triaxus still existed.
Right, right.
Yeah, so Triaxus is one of the planets that was detailed in Distant Worlds, of course. And an adventure, Pathfinder Adventure Path number 70, takes place on Triaxus, and there's a fairly lengthy gazetteer of that planet in that volume. And of course that was several years ago, but that gazetteer covered the larger political landscape of this planet and the fact that the orbit of the planet goes 317 years, and so their summers are very long and their winters are very long, and they have these shorter transitional seasons.
Right, right.
And so the native species, the most populous native species on this planet, has evolved to the point where when they are born during the winter, they have very light skin, they are covered in fur for the most part, and they have sort of elf-like qualities to them. Okay. And the winter time is when the campaign is taking place in Pathfinder and subsequently also in Starfinder, which we'll get to. Which we'll get to. In a moment.
And that would be, let me go here. Yeah. And the adventure you're talking about?
Yes, is that one right there? Yes, number 70. Which Frozen Stars.
Yeah, I really like this one, by the way. It's a good one,
yeah, so. I've run pieces of this in various events, and I love throwing ursicas at people because they are giant, massive fur-preying mantises that have sticky, viscous ice spit, and you know who doesn't love tying up some people in some sticky bug spit?
It sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great time.
So anyway. And so they are soft. They have fur.
Yes.
They're elven.
Yeah, they look like elves, but they are not actually elves. They are a different species altogether. And in Pathfinder, we called them Triaxians. And so when we got to Starfinder, moving forward a little bit, we had the challenge of we're approaching this planet holistically, and there are lots of different species that live on the planet, and traditionally when you're talking about a person who lives on a planet or is from a place, you refer to them by the name of that place. Okay. And so the word Triaxian then became the word for everybody who lived on Triaxus, and we were really challenged to try to come up with a specific species name for these elven-like native creatures here. And so we came up with the word Riforian. So when you're in Starfinder, when you're reading through Starfinder and you see the word Riforian, that is the old traditional Triaxian from Pathfinder.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, and so that gazetteer article in number 70 covered the fact that Riforians are the most populous humanoid species on the planet, that Dragonkin are also very populous, and that Riforians and Dragonkin often work together, and in fact, Riforians mount on Dragonkin and go into battle in something called the Dragon Legion in Pathfinder that has become the Skyfire Legion in Starfinder. Okay. So there's that in the Allied territories, and the Skyfire Mandate, which is this land bridge that is in between the two major continents, and then on the western side of the world there's something called the Drakelands, and that's where the true dragons live, and they have realms and they have hordes, and you know they're largely chromatic and evil, and so they're looking to try to take over territory, and the major conflict in Pathfinder on Triaxus is the dragons versus the bonded Riforians and Dragonkin, trying to sort of hold them off while they're trying to take over and enslave like the rest of the planet. Okay,
all right. And now when it comes to, because I've got a map that I'm going to, should I show that now or do you want to hang on to that?
Sure.
Because it's this one.
It is,
Is there a map for this that was also in Neverwinter Nights? Or was this the first time we got to actually map out everything?
Neverwinter Nights.
Oh wait, not Neverwinter Nights.
That's okay. It's got similarly kind of cool,
they do,
color schemes going on. Yeah.
But was this the first time we actually saw the area mapped out?
So, so this map came largely from Distant Worlds. The gazetteer that's in Pathfinder number 70 is zoomed in on the Skyfire Mandate, which is that land bridge kind of in between, you know, the allied territories of the Riforians and the Dragonkin and the dragons themselves who are trying to take over. That was, they're sort of the mediating force, and there's, at that point in Pathfinder, there were the mounted sort of combat legions that were trying to keep the dragons at bay and protect the do-gooders sort of the allied territories. And so that map shows up in Distant Worlds, and there's a few things that are mentioned outside of that primary sort of landmass and conflict. But we filled in all of the pieces of this map for Starfinder in a way that we hadn't before, and so there are places that are named and that are detailed in Pact Worlds as they exist in Starfinder that were either didn't exist in Pathfinder or were just never mentioned.
Okay, so the map that I have doesn't, in the book here, and everything is labeled. That's got
in the book,
it's got this stuff. The one that I have is just a map. There's nothing there. So let's kind of walk through just a little bit. So you talked about the Skyfire Mandate, and that's the center kind of land bridge.
Yeah, you'll see that skinny, if it's up right now, that's that skinny landmass that goes in between the two eastern and western continents. Okay,
cool. And then you've got the Drake lands that you mentioned. That would be on the left side, kind of the center mass of that land mass that's over there.
And there are still dragons there. They're just doing different things, and in some cases are cybernetic instead of flesh and bone, or undead, or other weird things that we were able to do. In Starfinder,
it's very Starfinder-y.
It is. It was so much fun coming up with what does this look like in the future. Because dragons and pew pew lasers mix really, really well when you put them together.
I actually got a question on the message boards today.
Oh, did you?
About dragons specifically, about how they participate in starship travel.
Okay. So, there are starships that are the size of entire planets, so they fit dragons.
That is true, So it's not so much that the dragons have a hard time doing it. It's just that they need to find a ship that accommodates them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it happens just like that. So there you go. Hey, Thirsty, welcome. So let's see. We've got so the layout. Let's go back to the map real quick. So that's the basic layout. And we've got the expanse at the top, which is all ice. It's a polar cap, I assume.
Yeah. So Triaxus on the north and south poles in the winter time, they have these land masses that are basically just ice coverings that go down for hundreds, if not thousands of miles, and that so the expanse is the northern one, the southern one is the encroach, and then the people that sort of populate those have various ways of dealing with making sure that their settlements are able to survive throughout the winter, because they've been here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and they have their traditions, and now technology is kind of in the mix.
Okay, and then let's see, on the right side, I'm looking at so many things backwards right now. So it's the right side is where the allied territories would be in that center mass on the right side, connected by the Skyfire Mandate. Okay. Good. Okay, so that way when you look at that map, at least there's a little bit of a hint of where some of the main stuff would be. What else do we want to point out on this that would be good for folks to know?
So the southern continent that you're seeing on the map, if that map is still up, it's called Ning, and that is something that was mentioned in Distant Worlds, but it is fleshed out a little bit more in the Starfinder universe here in Pact Worlds, and that is a suzerainty. It's an entirely mercantile-based government and society. Yeah, and there's a little bit of a sort of a divine element in that the ruler of Ning is considered immortal. And it is maybe not necessarily actually immortal, but is treated as such as a divinely mandated ruler. And so they are in charge of not only all the government, but all of the business, and they are really a hub in the solar system, as well as, as it's applicable on Triaxus. So it's not everybody really cares that much about it, but those who do, will pilgrimage to Ning and make all of those trade connections and do all of that sort of thing.
Oh, cool.
So, so we talk a little bit about who the current immortal suzerain is. It's actually Faechild Gnome in Starfinder, which is somewhat of a a new differentiation between Fey Children gnome, which are our traditional kind of Pathfinder style First World gnomes, versus Bleachling gnome, which is a new thing in Starfinder, and that is sort of a very kind of grayed out, emotionally objective, and I don't want to say Eeyore, but it's sort of subdued type of gnome. They've evolved into these two subsets. People who've survived the bleaching versus your more traditional gnomes. So one of the more traditional gnomes is the immortal suzerain, who is in charge of all of this commerce and has lots and lots of power on the planet and is enacting various different types of schemes. Here.
All right. So I'm noticing here, is that Zoe?
That is not the same Zoe that you're thinking of. Yeah,
well, because there's no exclamation point, first of all.
Exactly. Yes.
But there's a region here called Zoe, and the first thing I think of is the producer, the executive producer.
He's got an exclamation point.
Yeah, he always does.
He's got a little mustache.
Yeah, what's funny is, just really quick in the chat, I do have a show planned for Abadar. I just don't know when that's going to go. But the Abadar Corporation is definitely something we want to get into. Yeah. Maybe that would be and also, behind the scenes, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I've been trying to get Joe Piscini on this show, and now I'm publicly just calling it out.
Oh, no.
I've been trying to get Joe on this show because now I'm getting people in the forums that are like on the message boards. They're like, we want Joe, and I'm like, I hear you.
We need to prove Joe's not a hologram.
We need
to prove that
we're still trying to get the technology.
Here.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe Joe wants to talk about Abadar.
Possibly.
So anyway, we'll see. But I definitely want to talk about that. I want to talk about planets and stuff, but I also want to get into those societies. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So hopefully soon we'll get that one going.
That'd be great.
Okay, so what's do you want to talk about these folks that I have pictures of?
Sure.
Or do you want to go around somewhere else?
I don't know. Let's see, what other pictures have you got there?
I've got someone called a Dragonblood.
Yeah.
This fella looks like he's got a bone to pick with somebody because he looks mean.
Yeah. So that's going to be a Winterborn Rhyphorian, a big burly version of a Winterborn Rhyphorian, and the Dragon-blooded concept is actually a theme that shows up in the Pact Worlds hardcover, and it gives +1 to charisma and really reflects somebody who's grown up on a type of planet or in a type of society in which dragons are very common. There's a lot known about dragons, and this is specifically somebody who has a tie to a dragon in some way. That could mean that there's a dragon in their far, far distant genealogical past. It could mean that they've just spent their entire life researching and learning about dragons. It could be that they are part of some sort of dragon worshipping cult. Maybe a Dahak worshiper would be dragon-blooded, or somebody who's brought up in that type of environment.
Right.
And so it conveys some, later on, some resistances that are associated with dragons. You end up getting a lot of understanding of dragons' motivations and bonuses to culture checks to reflect those things. And, you can, at 18th level, spend some time kind of like examining all your little shinies and get some resolve points back from, that kind of like latent internal greed that a lot of dragons carry within them. Whether you're a good person or a bad person, being able to harness that is something that we wanted to reflect mechanically, and that's what this theme does. Okay,
so getting into the whole idea of the theme of the dragon blood, there's not a specific kind of a series of lineage that has to be met before you're dragon blood.
No,
it could
not at
just
all.
Be, there's a little bit back there, second cousin once removed, or something like that.
Yeah, it could be something that if you want to play a character who's not even aware that they have those ties to dragons, this could be an interesting way to reflect that, and them coming to terms with these latent natural abilities that they have and figuring out, where that is in their past. Or you could go on the opposite side and play somebody who is obsessed with dragons and moved to Triaxus, when they were in university, and learned everything that they could, and maybe they're part of some of these societies that are mentioned here in Pact Worlds, and we certainly do throw out a number of different realms that are overseen by dragons, who are, instead of in the Pathfinder version of Triaxus, trying to build their territories and their hordes, are actually more like CEOs now in Starfinder, and they run companies that we call Dragon Core, And so
like it.
because territory is not such a big deal to them anymore, they're always trying to expand their influence throughout the solar system and the galaxy and build up their wealth and their influence. And there's much more, it's much more of a chess game in Starfinder than it was in Pathfinder, which focused more sort of on their territory and them trying to take over parts of the planet.
Right, right. I mean, not that this is across the board, but there seems to be a fun running theme of this existed back in the day, and they were raiders, or they were a religion or something like that.
Yeah.
And now the ones that have survived and made it into Starfinder through the gap and all of that sort of thing, a lot of them realized, well, the actual real thing we want to do is be a business or a corporation or something. It's
a really interesting question. It was the reason I really wanted to write and tackle Triaxus and Starfinder, is because to me, the concept of Triaxus and dragons and dragonkin and bonded Triaxians, humanoids, and their dragonkin is a very core high fantasy concept.
Yeah.
And it's a really fun challenge to look at what does this fundamental thing look like in the far future, and how have these understandings and how is the technology and the magic of the world changed exactly the way that works. And so, the answer with the dragons are, instead of trying to get a bunch of territory, they are now in charge of companies, and they're now trying to make a bunch of money, and, they're much more diplomatic maybe than they used to be. And they just have slightly altered motivations. One of the ways that we tackled changing the Dragon Legion, which was that group of mounted combatants that were protecting the allied territories from the Drakelands, one of the ways we changed that was we made that more of a loose group of mercenary companies then that are available for hire, maybe from the allied territories to protect against an incursion of dragons that are coming from the Drakelands, but maybe just from anywhere in the solar system. They're known for their savviness and being able to handle giant hordes of dragons coming at them, and they're very good at what they do. Right. And so we really built in the possibility of sort of having your Riforian Han Solo with your bonded dragonkin Chewbacca instead of a Wookiee, and so it's just really been kind of fun to see how people have put that into play.
I like that. And for some reason I have this idea of dragons also evolving to the point where maybe they've got a suit on, and there's a dragon with like a big horde of credits behind him. And instead of
physical
just
credits,
and they're just like they've got steeple claws going, and they're just more like business-minded, savvy, and all that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily a fight; it's just a really hard negotiation. I think and it's very interesting that we can do different things with the dragons in Starfinder. They don't just have to be, well, this is a gold dragon, or this is a green dragon, or this is a white dragon. We have a dragon called Dretchniliax, who is fully a cybernetic dragon to the point where she is more technology and metallic bits than actual flesh and bone dragons. Oh, nice. Okay.
She's got gun-mounted metallic hind legs, and her wings are made of carbon plates, and she's got magic and heat-sensing implants in her eyes, and she's one of the not nice dragons that has one of her ears, and she's actually making what's described as sort of like dragon flesh augmentations, and so there might be some room in the future for a dragon flesh augmentation version of like necrographs, for example. So that would be amazing. Yeah. So
and I remember the dragon you're talking about is in the core rulebook, I believe, right?
Dretchniliax is new, actually.
Okay. Oh, I thought, isn't there like a big silver, like a mechanical dragon in the core rulebook? Or am I mixing up my books?
You might be thinking something else, yeah. Or maybe I'm just totally forgetting, which is possible.
Yeah, well, let's just agree that I'm messing things up. And that makes it easier. Okay, so you mentioned the Dragonkin.
Yes.
And let's go into this thing, because it looks like it is something that is not a nice thing, but I imagine they're not all aligned to be evil or menacing or anything like that. So you could have one of these as an ally.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And in fact, there's a long tradition going all the way back to Pathfinder of the Dragonkin and the Riforians being very closely intertwined. And in fact, we have always said that there are very few independent civilizations, independent settlements that are all dragonkin. For the most part, they are entirely mixed with the Rhyphorians, and so you have generations upon generations, long lines of this Rhyphorian family and this Dragonkin family, and they all are sort of bonded to one member or the other going down the lines.
Right.
So just like that deep familial, often emotional connection was something that we really wanted to carry forward in Starfinder. But of course we can't really have the Rhyphorians still mounted on the Dragonkins to ride into battle, as cool as that is in a setting where starships are a thing and like space flight is a thing. It doesn't really make sense, so that's why we changed that to the pilot co-pilot type of situation.
I like it, and that's the Han and Chewie.
Yeah, and so there are
combo.
certainly teams of evil Rhyphorians and evil Dragonkin. There are probably evil Dragonkin working with the neutral Rhyphorians. The color of their scales there is not necessarily an indication of their alignment in the way that true dragons would be. So there's just a lot of options and a lot of storytelling potential and fun things that we can do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Then with, are there any kind of groups or anything else that are trying to spread off of Triaxus and try to take over more of the Pact Worlds or anything like that? Are they pretty much bound to their own planet and they're like, we're fine here and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think that when we're talking about the Allied territories and the Skyfire Mandate, they are largely, although there is an Allied Council in which most territories have a representative that go there and that's their government, that they are doing their own thing to a very wide extent, where you have everything from very small insular low technology civilizations to high technology spaceports. And trading organizations and a lot of development of technology that then goes off world, or people who then sort of leave and come back and bring things. But so because of the diversity of that, they're sort of focused on their own thing and they're not necessarily looking to expand their own territory.
Right.
They're small and they don't always necessarily get along, and they're not always necessarily very well organized for the most part, which is why they're so small.
Right.
But on the other side of that, you've got the Drakelings, you've got the dragons and the Dragon Corps, and they are absolutely looking off-world. They're absolutely looking for ways to get allies, to make themselves more powerful, to continue to build up their hordes, to continue to have influence, and they're just not doing it in necessarily an overt physical way to try to get territory off-world. They're more trying to build up their own prestige and reputation for future long-term plans, as dragons do.
Yeah. There's plans within plans going on there, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's more of a political chess game than it is.
I like that.
I'm building this army and I'm going to go conquer another territory. These dragons aren't necessarily, for the most part, that interested in that.
Right. So let me ask you this: if you were doing a homebrew and a part of it or some of it is set on Triaxus, or the majority of it, what are some of the spots and the things about Triaxus that you're like, I would want to explore this and I would want to explore that? Kind of a high point of homebrew, if you will.
Yeah.
Just because I always find that's one of the hardest things about planning out a homebrew, is making sure you're taking advantage of the environment as much as possible.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you might consider, hey, we might want to deal with this part or go by here or something like that?
Well, one thing so there's a lot of different adventure seeds, a lot of different campaign seeds that you can pull off of Triaxus, which was always sort of our goal, that, we wanted it to still be the same place, but to feel distinctly Starfinder and to have all of the same types of hooks that you would expect of a place, of a whole world that's within Starfinder. It's just very much themed along dragons and dragonkin and the planning and the plotting, right? But there's this place that you'll see on the map is a large island that's to the northeast. It's called Grenlock, and it's not labeled up there, but you'll be able to see it's that northern part of that island that's off the main coast there. And Grenlock is probably what I would do if I was doing a homebrew that was outside of the traditional, dragonkin situation.
Right.
Because Grenlock is sort of this Total Recall-esque hologram park that is it's kind of a mix between the vacations of the mind of Total Recall and something like Westworld, in which it's entirely like virtual reality, just paradise, right?
Yeah.
And so people go there, and it's run by this elf technomancer, and they sort of go into their pods, and they get plugged in through their brains and through the other various like sensory cores, and they are able to have this tailored experience. But there's also this sort of sinister underbelly to it, where not everybody is allowed in all of these parts of this facility, and there may be something weird going on. There might be some experimentations happening that people who sign the waivers that they're required to sign might not know what they're getting into. And so I think I would really want to do like an intrigue campaign that starts out with people going into this paradise as a vacation and having things kind of go horribly wrong, and get them to explore exactly what's happening and end up figuring out some of the mysteries of that place, because I think that has a lot of potential. Yeah, I can see that. Kind of once you say Total Recall, it's like, oh well, that a lot of that is going to be locked into my brain, but the potential of just maybe memories jogging loose, or malfunctions. And maybe the campaign starts after your PCs have done this pristine, brilliant paradise vacation, and they're remembering things, and all of a sudden they're getting these blips of things that that didn't happen. There was not a giant cybernetic dragon that chased us all out at one point. What's going on here? And just getting some hints of what's really going on, and maybe what's about to spiral out of control throughout the course of the campaign, and how they might be able to help affect change with that. Right. That would be cool. Right. That would be great. That would be really cool. So if somebody wanted to know more about Triaxus, what could they pick up that would help them would you recommend going back into Pathfinders for the Gazetteer? Well, if you're only wanting to play Triaxus and Starfinder, I would say really the only thing that you need is this Pact Worlds hardcover. There's a 10-page article here about Triaxus that covers all the stuff I've been talking about, plus a little bit more. A whole bunch of additional Gazetteer locations are explained. A whole bunch of more campaign hooks and adventure hooks are in there as well. And, of course, you got the dragon-blooded theme for your character if you want. The core rulebook covers a little bit about Triaxus and sort of the basics as well, but this is really where you're going to get the meat of that. If you want to have the fun of digging into the lore and find out where everything came from and how things changed, definitely check out Distant Worlds, which is a campaign setting book for Pathfinder from several years ago, as well as this Gazetteer article that shows up in Pathfinder number 70, The Frozen Stars, part of the Reign of Winter Adventure Path. So there's lots of information out there. It just depends on what depth of lore you want to get into. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. We're going to do a sign-off, and then we'll do some Q&A. Okay. All right. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you would like to be a part of the Q&A that we're getting ready to start right now, consider joining us on Twitch, because you're watching this on YouTube. I'm trying to make it so that I'm actually talking to Twitch people, but this part of it is for YouTube only. If you'd like to join us for this Q&A we're about to start, join us on Twitch. We do this every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and after the part that you just watched, we get in and we talk to the people in the chat, and we take some of their questions and have a good time. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. If you liked the video, feel free to hit the like button and hit the bell notification button and subscribe to us, because it helps us a lot. And in the meantime, for Paizo and for my friend Amanda and for me, your old buddy Dan, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.